Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Salesforce Apex Hour. Today agenda is the Spring 18 Lightning Component Framework update. So today Mohit Srivastav is a Salesforce MVP. He is a speaker and he will going to give the detailed overview like what all the new features are there in Spring 18. And who I am, my name is Amit Chaudhary. I am a Salesforce MVP. I am active on the developer community and used to post answer there. Apart from that, I'm also a blogger at Amit Salesforce blogspot.in, and I'm a co-organizer of Farmington Hill, and I'm running Salesforce Apex Hours. So I don't want to take much more time here, so let's hand over to Mohit.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Amit. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Mohit Srivastava. I have been with Salesforce ecosystem now for almost 7 years, and I'm a Salesforce MVP, and I work as a technical architect at a company called Code Science. Primarily, I've been focusing on my contribution to a community called salesforce.stackexchange.com. You'd have seen me. And I recently authored a book called Learning Salesforce Einstein, which was released last year, July. So if you get a chance, just go through that and let me know what you feel about the content. And you can also reach out to me at my Twitter handle at mshrivastava30. All right. So what are we talking or covering in this 1 hour of session today, right? So we're gonna be talking about what are some of the latest updates to the Lightning component framework, primarily focusing on the component library documentation that Salesforce gives, the different base components that Salesforce has launched, right? Like input field, record edit form, view form, and how to actually work with Lightning components inside a flow. Like if you already used to Salesforce flows, so how do you actually communicate between your Lightning components and add your flows inside those Lightning components? So we're going to take a look at some of the examples, how that can be achieved, and we're going to talk about some more base components, like list view, tree grid, carousel, some of the formatted input components that Salesforce has. And also at the end, we'll talk about how can we, use this component framework to dynamically create a markup on the front end, and how do we use functions like find, to find out the proper DOM. And later on, I'll provide some references, and we'll have some time set up for Q&A as we go through this. Okay. All right. So the first thing first is, the Lightning component framework has lots and lots of components now. It has lots of components. So basically, what we can do is, so if you go to your Salesforce.com and go to a specific URL called component reference, you will see all the components that are listed, right? And really what I want to show you is how I have set my project here and how I'm navigating to the component reference library, right? So currently I've used Salesforce DX actually. So if you are not familiar with DX, I would request you to actually go through the DX because it makes development very simpler with a lot of options that you have and the command line it provides and the IDE support that you have in Visual Studio Code Editor. It makes it perfect sense to kind of migrate to that kind of a model, a scratch org model where you're no more limited to sort of remembering your developer org name or anything like that. It can be completely source driven, meaning you have your code in the source. It might be your Git or version control, and then you basically use SFDX to automatically create an org out of it, right? Create a scratch org and then push everything, whatever you have in your source, directly to that scratch org. So DX has improvised a lot in the coming releases, and really what I'm using here is DX. So what I've done really is, if you type this command, basically you can navigate to the component reference library that Salesforce has in your instance, right? So let me actually go to one of the execute that command. So this is my project folder basically. It's called Spring 18 Lightning, and in this project folder, I have SFDX set up, so I can execute pretty much all the SFDX commands from here. So let me show you how I can sort of open my Salesforce environment and stuff like that. So as you can see, I don't have my Salesforce instance currently, right? And I just have my project. So how do I actually open my default Scratch org or Salesforce instance, I need not type my username, password, or anything like that, before. So all that you need to do is say sfdx force org open, and this is going to open the org. So once you kind of set up your like an sfdx flow, you will see that you don't need to type username and password. It's, once you create a Scratch org, you can directly reach out here with the command line interface, right? So this is the first thing I want to show out, right? You don't have to type your username, password. If you set up project as sfdx, basically very simple. Just type in the commands, and command line, it will automatically open your org with all the components that you have. Now, actually, I want to show you how we can open the component reference library, right? Where we can, it's a basically new library where you can reference what are the new components or what are the component library that are available to you, right? So this is this is also a Lightning app that's built by Salesforce. So actually, what I'll do is I'll just execute this command, and you will see the component reference library being opened here, right? So you can see the component reference library got opened, and you can see all the components that Salesforce provides. And once you kind of click through each of them, right, for some of them, it's going to give you a documentation, how you're going to work with that, a detailed documentation, the specifications that are allowed, the attributes that are allowed, and really, a comprehensive documentation. So pretty much handy, when you're working with Lightning components, especially now that we have lots of components. And one more thing is you can also see the components that you sort of build, customly. Like for example, these are some of the components that I've built, right? Like Carousel and flow example that I'm going to show it today, right? So I don't have the specification, but as you can see, what happened here is really those components also kind of showed up, apart from whatever components that you have. And if you have a managed package installed and has a Lightning component in it, you will see that this will also have those features as well. And also the interfaces, right? If you have built your own interfaces and whatever the Salesforce provides, you will see that. And similar thing happens with the events as well. uh, Really, one thing that is missing here is the JavaScript library, right? The Lightning Component Native API. So I think ultimately this will be our reference documentation for anything that we do here, and this will be a source of reference, right? Currently, if you want to sort of, I think if you want to sort of uh, find out the reference documentation for the JavaScript, you still have to navigate to a URL. Let me quickly see if I can. Yeah, so basically you navigate to this URL, Aura Docs. I think you navigate to this URL called, just give me a moment here. I think it's called, yeah, it's called Aura Docs /reference/app. So if you are here in your Lightning experience, right, what you can do is, let me actually get this out of my way here. Yeah, so what you can do really is just go here and say Aura. So you're gonna say Aura Docs slash reference dot app. Yeah. So this is gonna open your what do you call the JavaScript API library. So this information currently is not synced with the component library that Salesforce provides. So some of the things, like for example, JavaScript API about about the namespace, like the $A components. How do you create components, and what are the APIs hidden inside of component $component, right? So all these things are documented here, in a different, basically in a different documentation. So currently I used combination of these two docs to sort of understand the component framework native APIs, as well as the ones that are provided by the component reference that are provided, or the base components that's been added by Salesforce here. So yeah, so let's actually, so yeah, I mean, what you can do really is use command line. I just want to show you that you can use command line to a greater extent, specifically for these kind of purposes, right? Like for example, if you want to open the document, let's say you want to open the document URL here, right? All that you need to do is provide the path with the source arg open, and you need not, you no more have to sort of kind of remember this, if you kind of create, so so as you can see, this will open that particular URL, and you can browse your documentation or whatnot. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly show before we kind of deep dive into each of the components that I have in the examples is you can also create a shell script in your project folder. So for example, in my case, I've created a shell script. So this shell script, basically what it does is it allows you to write a bash. So you can write a bash program, and then you can write a shell script, basically a bash file. So what basically it will do is it will, if you want to type like 4 or 5 set of commands, you can actually write it in this shell script and kind of invoke that instead of having to each time go and remember all those commands and execute, right? For example, in this case, I always want to open the component reference guide, so I created a simple utility here, right? So for example, if I want to kind of do that, I can say util/util/. The utils is my folder where I have this bash file to run. So when I sort of execute this, you will see that it's going to open the component reference or the URL for me directly from the command line. So all this you need sfdx basically to to automate certain things. So basically, you can automate your developer workflow. All right, so that's what I wanted to sort of just convey to you, how we can actually use this component library. And we'll also see, there are some things that we can do, like for example, open the builder directly from like Lightning App Builder or Lightning App. As we go through the more of these component library, we're gonna find out. So I just want to highlight, like, the first change that was done in Spring 18 was to give us a better documentation, right, through that URL, and that's you can automate it further, in your developer workflow by having sfdx and just executing everything on the command line. Okay, so now we're gonna go over some of the base components that Salesforce has been launching in this release, right? So the base components basically here are so first component that I want to kind of show it to you is Lightning Input Field, because this was a big deal. If you remember Visual Force, the the Apex Input Field was like really a helpful utility for developers where we need not write lots of code. We got things like lookup, date picker, and a lot of other features directly by inputting a simple markup, right? So this release, Salesforce has tried to bridge that gap, giving us this utility called Lightning Record Edit Form component. So what this allows us basically is to reference any input field, and reference that. So to give you an example, let's actually go to my source code here, okay, and let's go to the component. So I have this component called as Lightning lead create component, right? So this lead create component, basically, if you look at, right, it uses this record edit form. So the record edit form basically has two versions. So if you don't want to sort of keep it in an edit view of a record, then you don't provide the ID to it. So in this case, I want to use it just like to create a lead. So I have not specified this record ID parameter or whatever it is, right? This record ID parameter, you need it only if you want to sort of provide a record ID to it or a record context to it, right? So in this scenario, in this example, basically, I'm not providing anything. So here in this example, what I'm doing is, I'm just using that Lightning input field here with the field names, whatever Salesforce provides, right? What are the lead fields that Salesforce provides here? So if you can list them out, and you have this utility, then so let's see how this kind of works, right? So one important thing you will notice is you will need something like a button here, which should be of type submit, because that is what it is submitting this entire thing. And one more important thing is you can't read out individual values. If you want to access individual values of Lightning input field, at this point, there are no hooks to actually extract values from each of the fields. Got to remember that. So let's take an example here. So let me actually quickly open the home page. So this is my home page basically. So I have this lead create example in my, so let's see. So this is the marketing application that Salesforce automatically provides, right? So I'm going to campaign, right? So as you can see, I would have implemented something like available for a record homepage, which means it's available on every record homepage. And then this is the place where I have, um, is this the component? No, this is not the component. Okay, so this is a different component. Let's go to the home page. I think, yeah. So this is a component basically, I have the last name, I have the company. So these are two fields that are required to create a lead. I mean, you can add as many as fields you want here, basically. Um, so let's actually try creating a lead here. So let's say we have a lead called Amit, and his company is, let's say, stock exchange, or let's say NYSE, right? So yeah, so if I enter this and create a lead, you will see that it created a lead automatically, and it went to the lead actually. So this is the lead that got created. This is the thing. Now you can really add whatever fields you want here with Lightning Input Field, and basically once you kind of add it, it becomes really really easy, from that point, to navigate, and we can quickly add, just to show you some of the things here. I can quickly add some fields here and show you how we can add different fields. So let's see. So let's go to the let's go to the lead create workflow. I think I have some good fields here apart from the last name. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can add some fields here and see how this kind of works, if you guys are interested. So let's actually go to this component. So again, one more thing I wanted to show you was, you can navigate to any of these URL from the command line, and let's actually edit this page, or let's actually edit the home page here. Let's see the component. So I don't think we have it on the lead page. Let's actually go back to the home page. Yeah, so this is the component, right? So this was the flow example. Okay, that was not the one that I intended. My apologies. I think this is the one that was intended. Yeah, this is the one where I said, okay, these are the fields, first name, last name, and the company. Edit page. Yeah, so if we want to actually find out, okay, if our source code is completely in sync, because we would have modified certain fields here, if we want to make sure that, okay, whatever the code is there in our arg and whatever the code that is there in my local. So currently it looks like, okay, I have the record edit form for the lead, right? Lead create component. So it looks like this is the lead create component, and I see that, I have a company and I have a last name, first name, I have a salutation, but in my markup, it doesn't look like, whatever I have. So which means that my source, that is there here, and my, whatever the code is there in the arg is not in sync, right? So what I can do, I can really pull it, using sfdx force source pull. Now it's going to show me if there are any changes in my arg compared to my local, so now it's trying to pull everything up, right? So it looks like there is nothing, which means, the source and this one is in sync. So let me actually do this. sfdx for source push. So source push is going to push all the latest changes from my machine onto the, yeah. So you see there was one change that it got identified. Let's actually add a phone number field here on one of the things here. Let's say I have to add a phone number field here. So let's say I add a phone. Okay, let me say I add a phone number field here, and let's see what does the force push do. The force push is gonna push that particular file for me now. Okay, it did say that it pushed this file. Now actually, so let's actually refresh this. Let's get back here. There you go. So we have the phone field as well here, right? So next time when I kind of use this and create a field here, like let's say, Amit, let's say Audrey, and then say company, right? And then say phone number, right? And then I say phone number, and when I sort of create a lead, you will see a toaster getting populated. And when I can go back to that lead here and see, if the phone number was actually populated. This is the lead that I created. This is the phone number that got populated. Everything got populated. So basically, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to sort of use this component and build anything, anything powerful with, with just few lines of code, right? There are some things that I noted down. So the document says they support lookup, but I found some initial bugs with that, right? If you want to reference some lookup field on that, you will see that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think they're still working on this. Um, and provide an ID if you want to edit an existing record, right? If you want to provide the context, you can add another attribute called as record ID here, somewhere in this, and then basically it will just become an edit form with all the fields populated rather than having a blank fields. Okay. All right, let's actually move on to the next slide. So the record view form basically. So similarly, we also have a record view form where what you can do basically is, you can pass the record ID and then use the output field to kind of create the display layout. And so it's very simple to understand. I didn't have an example for this because it's straightforward and easy to understand. Just pulse checking. Is my audible, Amit? Is it all good at this point? So,
yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so now let's actually look into the other one. The other big thing that Salesforce has been working on is basically the flow component, right? The flow component is basically, this is a big thing actually, the flow component. So the flow component basically what allows you to do is build a flow in Salesforce, and then use Lightning components to pass data back and forth. Meaning, you create input variables, you can pass those variables right from the Lightning component, and then whatever the output that you get, you can get back that variables inside the inside our code, inside our Lightning component. So let's take an example before we kind of deep dive. So here there are two different types of flows, if you have worked with flows. One is headless flows. So headless flows are basically invoked by process builder. They don't have a screen element to it basically. The other type of flow is obviously flows with screens, right? You can create input screens and whatnot, and then have that kind of a utility. But really, the biggest thing that to understand here is, you can pass data, between your Lightning component and your flows. Let's take an example before we sort of. So to show you an example, the same lead create component that I have on the home page here, the component. So this is a Lightning component. Now, when I do a create new lead, it is calling a flow. Okay. So let's actually go to the flow builder. So let's actually, before we actually go here, let's actually go to the flow builder. Okay, let's see. So let's go to the setup. Yeah. So let's actually go to the flow builder. Flows, yes, flows. Yeah, so I have a flow actually. I have a simple flow example here. I can open it and show it. Basically, it does nothing. Okay, it says to download. Let's just have to allow it. Open it. Yeah, it just uses Adobe Flash basically. Run Flash this time. My browser has security thing, so it kind of blocked it. But it's gonna display it now. Yeah, so basically my flow is a headless flow. It is doing nothing. If you look at my flow, what I'm doing here is I'm using the create component here. I'm saying create lead, and the fields that I want to actually map is the company and the last name. And from where I'm mapping, mapping it from a variable. So lead var is a temporary variable that I've created. So based on the lead var, I'm mapping it. So company actually maps to this variable called lead var. So this variable is of type S object. So if we go to the Explorer, right? If you go to the Explorer, if you look at this variable lead var, so if you look at this variable is of input output type, but this is of the object type called lead. Okay, so this is the lead variable, and this is the output variable. So once the lead is getting created from this flow, right, I'm passing the record ID, as you can see here, the record ID to another variable called lead ID, which is of type again input output, but it's generally an output. You can say that it's an output. So this flow is a headless flow, right? So if I actually see what is the type of this flow, right? Let's see. Yeah, the type of this flow is auto launch flow, right? It is not of the type uh, display or a screen element. So it is auto launch flow, meaning how do I pass? Now the question is, okay, how did I get the screen here, right? So if I am telling you guys that this has no screen, how do I manage to get these two fields there, right? So to understand that, let's actually go into the component. So let me actually close this. So this is the example, the flow create example. So as you can see, one important thing to note is I just have made it available by implementing an interface called as available for flow screens. Okay. And then I've created an attribute of S object type lead. Okay. So this is the exact variable or the input variable that I want to pass. So this is my input tags, to capture that and capture everything in an attribute. Now what I'm doing here, as you can see you can see it in the controller file, is whenever I press that button, create lead, right, whatever the input values that the user is entering, I actually get those values from that particular attribute, right? Component.get is basically getting that attribute value. Let me close all these things so that you can see things more clearly. There's so many files here. Yeah. So let's say I also want this component example so that we can relate back and forth. So as you can see here, I have this attribute called as lead record, which actually binds to these two fields here, and then in my markup, whenever I click this button called as lightning button, and whenever this action create lead is executed, I say, okay, the input variables to me are these, right? So now how do I start the flow? So to start the flow, what Salesforce does is you can find that flow by, saying, okay, this flow is by, find this particular flow, right? How do you find that flow element is by aura ID. So you will allocate an aura ID. So you found that flow markup or the component, and then you say flow.start flow, meaning, you want to start and which flow you want to start. So this is nothing but the flow name, okay, the flow unique name. So if we go and look at the unique name, this is the unique name of the flow, right? So I've referenced that, and then I pass the input variable. So it was expecting an input variable of type it's expecting an input variable of type lead var, right, of S object type, and the name is lead var. So this name should exactly map to the flow name. So for example, in this case, in this scenario, if you look at our flows, basically, if you look at our flows, the variable name is exactly that I have to define in my input variables here. But the value I can get it from the lightning component attribute, and that lightning component attribute can be binded to the markup, right? So that's what I want to show here. So if you go here, Explorer, you can see the lighting var, and that is the S object variable here, right? So what I'm doing on the change of, on state handle status change, this is basically whenever the form, like whenever, we kind of have a status change in the flow, that is whenever the flow gets executed and successfully executed, then what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, get me the output variables, right? And if I inspect my output variables first, 0th element, then it is nothing but it is the value. If you look at the value, it is nothing but the lead ID property here, right? So you can extract all the information from this output variable. So once I get the lead ID, I just say, okay, this event, basically it fires an event to actually take me to that particular lead, right? So that's why you're seeing that on the home page, this component is actually working fine. When I say Mohit and when I say company as code science, right? When I create the lead, it actually creates the lead. The flow is finished, and then once the flow is finished on the success handler, I'm just navigating there, right? So as you can see, how I am passing the data basically between the flow elements and the flow. So you can imagine, you can create a survey or anything like any other business logic with the flow, and then use this component basically to kind of interact with that, right? You can control the UX of it. So if you go look at some of the examples, they will also show you, if you look at the Salesforce documentation, they will also show you examples with different things. I mean, they will also show you examples with how you can indicate, how you can use progress bar indicators inside the flow, and also examples on, okay, how do you work with, not these auto launch flows, but when you have a screen element inside the flow. So you can have lightning component with half of the screen element, half of the screen element driven by flow, and then flow can also be multi-step, right? So you can take decision based on the UX from lightning component, and then based on that you can continue pause. And also the JavaScript API that the flow provides for this flow component, like the start, there are APIs to pause this flow, again resume the flow based on some inputs from the lightning component. So basically what they are trying to do is really provide a very well integration between the between your flows and your lightning components, right? um, all right, so this covers the flow component basically, and you can control a lot of things here. You can control navigations, look and feel of the lightning component, and also you can dynamically update values in flow, using the lightning component. All right, now let's actually go to Lightning List View, right? So this is one of the feature where even Visualforce provided this. You had a markup where you said, oh, okay, if I want to sort of, um, take a list view and show all the records from that list view, we could have easily done that, a list view type of an interface basically, right? So let's look at this list view, that thing that Salesforce provides. So I think to use that, I have an example here in my source code. So let's actually take a look at that. Yeah, the Lightning List View, right? So what I've done basically is used something called as design resource. The design resource in Lightning is basically where you can, you know, provide certain parameters so that your admin can input that, and based on that parameters what you can do is you can write your logic. So for example, here I say object name, so and object name and list view name are configurable by the admin, and then this markup basically uses that object name and the list view name and shows them 15 records out of it. So let's take an example of, let's see in action how we can actually use this component that I've basically built. So let's actually edit this. Yeah, so the component here is the Lightning List View. So I'm going to just drag and drop this, right? See, by default, it is not displaying. I don't know if you guys can see, but by default, it is not viewing because there is no list view. So let's say let's actually go to let's say I want for a lead object. So let's see, let's actually go back to our lead object here and see if we have a list view here. Now let's create a list view. So list views are easy to create in Salesforce. So let's see. So leads with no phone number. So this is a list view, actually leads with no phone number, right? So this list view, if I wanted to, programmatically, get the same behavior as this list view with all these options, then I can say, I can go to this component and say list view, and then the list view name. This has to be the unique name. So leads with no phone. So just let's type this. Leads with no phone. Okay, it's with no phone. There we go. There we have the list view. Let me put this actually here, so that it's more clear. So as you can see, I've got the same list view here. So you can basically create as many list views, I mean, as many views you want, and use this component like it's a generic component. Once you add this design variable to this, using the design resource that I showed you, so you can be like a list view for every, it's a generic list view. You can use it once, so you can just use, like, you can say account and then put the account list view name and just populates, so this becomes like a generic component. So yeah, you can activate this. Next, you can say activate this. Yeah, save this back. Yeah, now you should see that list view actually Here we go. We have the list view, and it has all the functionalities where you can say, oh, I think you can actually, sort it, edit it, and then, expand the columns, contract it, sort it, things like that. It provides you the ability. These many abilities are actually provided by this component. Nice way, nice programmatic way to, get these list views if you want to, sort of create a predefined list view and add it to, some of the interfaces here. So this is a quick example of how you can use that list view component. Now let's actually switch back to the site. So really, it actually allows you to do things like, if you want, like, so one thing I want to show you, since we modified this layout, now if I do a force pull, right, you will see that, whatever the changes I did in my Salesforce are currently to the homepage layout, it's all gonna come in my local machine now. So it's actually pulling it. There you go. So as you can see, okay, I don't know what this is, what this line is all about here. Okay, so what I can see, as you can see here, is this particular thing got added up. So if we go here and if we look at that flexi page, so it says that a flexi page got added, basically um, using the force ball, right? So if we can go here and look at, so what we can do here is refresh this. So it got updated, and then you will see that that flexi page, whatever is got changed, right? This would have got changed here, in the thing. You'll also see that what happens is, really whatever the files that got changed or anything is changing, it the Visual Studio Code actually highlights it for you. So this is the exact change that got happened just now, in our home page default flexi page here. All right. So sorry, I don't know what is this happening. Amit, do you know why is this happening? Is somebody drawing something on the screen? I think somebody is drawing something on the screen here using the. Okay, I think the annotation is on here. Just give me a sec here. So clear all drawing. Yeah, I think the annotation was on here. Share. Okay, I don't want to annotate. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so now let's actually go to the other one. Let's go to tree grid. So tree grid is also a component basically added by Salesforce here. What it allows you to do is it kind of allows you to sort of have a tree view or a hierarchy view of the data along with specified columns. And let's take an example and look at it practically what happens. So let's go to the tree grid demo. So this is what I've built. So basically what it uses is it uses a set of columns and the data, and then we also tell which rows to expand. So if you look at the JS part of it, on the init load, I'm just saying, okay, these are the columns that I want, and this is the data or the hierarchical nested data that I want, right? So I just input that to the grid data, and then whatever the columns that I have here, right, whatever the columns that I define, I input it here. And then basically whatever the rows I want to expand, I just say that, okay, expand these rows, and then kind of put that set that here. Let's actually take a look at this. So again, as I said, any URL you can actually open by command line. You don't have to go into the developer console at all. If you kind of don't like developer console, I kind of like it, but I just got used to DX, and it's quite simpler here. So what you can do is force or open, and then you can say, okay, path of where I want to navigate, and I can say slash, and then basically if you know how to open the application, you say C, because this has no namespace, my org, and then say tree grid demo. So this is my app name basically, tree grid demo dot app, right? So once I execute this is going to open that particular application for me. Yeah, so as you can see, it's going to open that application. So it's opened that application. This is what I want to show. So this is a tree view of the data, right? It's a simple tree view of the nested data. And then, you can wrap text, clip text, and whatever the out-of-box base component feature that Salesforce provides, you can actually take that. And it also provides ability to actually select them. And, there are hooks for you in the JavaScript where you can say, okay, what was the selected, element? Or even if you select like this, it can tell you what are the selected components and stuff like that. If you're building some kind of an hierarchy or an account hierarchy or any sort of a product hierarchy, just explore this component because this can be really useful. Also, there is a component for tree view, just tree view. If you want just tree view and not, it's called Lightning Tree. It doesn't give you a grid, like it doesn't give you ability to allow columns. You just have one row where you can just scroll through. Okay. Now actually let's take a look at. Yeah, so the another component, now this is currently in beta basically. It's a carousel component. Pretty much helpful if you're building communities and stuff like that because requires a carousel. So the way carousel component works, so let's actually take an example here in my source code. So the carousel component, the way it works is basically you provide your carousel images. You can reference it from any path. Basically, this is a path. Currently, I've stored some of the things in static resource, right? And you can provide the header, description, and everything. And just it has ability, like it has some certain other things, like you can auto scroll it, or if you want to make it automated. Let's see in action actually. So let's actually put it on the home page. Let's actually edit this. Good thing about Lightning Component Builder, again, you can also open the builder in command line. I'm going to show you that. So basically, this is the carousel that I just want to show you here. So let's put this carousel somewhere, maybe at the bottom. Yeah, ignore the images, please. Not a UX person, so I didn't. I didn't actually take time to clean up this image. I just uploaded some random images here. As you can see, it provides a carousel. You can navigate through, if you had like a smaller images, you can. So basically, you can also create this behavior where, you just press this and then it sort of automatically navigates through, you know. So if you're building some kind of a carousel, this is a good component to sort of use it. Okay. It's in beta, so remember that it's in beta. It's not come out of GA, so you might want to see the consequences of, there might be some issues or something with the component, and probably it will be good to wait till GA before you kind of use for production applications. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about today was about the formatted input components, right? That Salesforce has been. So there are some special types, like for example, address fields, right? Like input names, where it's complex, right? So Salesforce actually have made it very easy by providing us those type of components as well, and then to format, different types of data types, right? They provide this component. So actually, you can take an example. I think I have an example here. Um, One of the examples here for that is, I think, okay, it's called Lightning Format Component Demo, right? Is it a component? So this is an application basically. So whenever it's an application, I can open it from the command line instead of going to developer console and kind of finding it. So let's do this. Yeah, let's do this and say, what was the application name? So the application name is Lightning Format Component Demo. Lightning Format Component Demo.app, right? Okay, it's not just CMP. Yeah, let's try to open this. So there you go. So I would just want to show you some simple examples of how this works. So basically, you just reference a markup. So for example, in this case, I have one big markup, right? I say input address, and then I have attributes actually everywhere. Like, you can have street, city, country, province, everything. It just automatically takes care of the layout for you, right? So, you can provide drop down options. So as you can see, the options I've kept it here. This can also come from the back end or from any of the services, right? Similarly, you have province options, right? So once you kind of do that, it becomes very easy, and you can add behavior. Like for example, I added required equals true, so it kind of automatically does it for you. So let's say I want to say why dot road. Um, I want to add the street address, or do this. I want to say state California or Tennessee. Tennessee is where I am currently. 37. Uh, Sorry, I just want to. Here's it 37415. Yeah. So as you can see here, I just provided that ability to do that, and it automatically also takes you to that particular place, exactly to that to that map URL, as well as I clicked on one of the formatted text. So basically, yeah, the idea is very simple. They provide you this component, and once you kind of the formatted address automatically takes care of formatting, right, and linking. So in this case, you see, as I'm typing, this is a formatted output text component basically that I've here. It uses the same parameters and automatically formats things for you. Um, yeah, that's about it. I mean, so the good thing about that formatted addresses automatically takes you to the map view, if you want to use that component. The best thing is you don't have to build individually. Like, earlier we used to have like individual things like an address component, and it doesn't used to take care of formatting, but now it kind of automatically does it for you. So they have a bunch of components. I don't want to go into each of there, but there are a bunch of components which have like formatting options now, like the name, location, phone, rich text, time, URL. So you can take a look at that as well. All right, so this is the big one and the last one probably, and then we'll open up for some Q&A. Um, so this basically, I want to show you an example of, how would I create a dynamic markup, right, in Lightning component. So what do I mean by dynamic markup is, till now, whatever you were seeing, right, all these demos like list views, these are all like static markups, right? Like, oh, I know it, like, I know that I have to have a Lightning input here. But let's say, you don't know the data type. Based on the data type, in your JavaScript, you want to dynamically create a markup, right? In jQuery, let's say a DOM creation, right? If you wanted to create a DOM through JavaScript or jQuery, we usually used to use the jQuery functions to do it, right? So in Lightning component also, what you can do is you can declare a special type of an attribute. So till now we have been declaring attributes of type primitives, right? Like a string, integer, or s object probably, or an apex object. You can also declare an apex object, but you can also declare a special data type called aura component array. So this is the aura component array that I'm declaring. The attribute name is dynamic form that I'm giving, and then I can reference that back in my markup here. So I just went here and referenced it. So now I can populate this. So let's look at the controller of this. So controller, what it does is basically it calls an helper. So helper is basically to keep your controller. So here I have defined the dynamic input. Now this can also come from a field set or whatever you want. So here I'm saying, okay, create me 3 different input fields. One is of text type, the other is of search type, the other is of input type. Create these 3 things, for me, and put it in the, create it dynamically. So I'm using this create components method. So create it dynamically, right, with same ID. I'm giving everything as same ID. So create it dynamically and put it in the form body. So form body is basically the dynamic component. Let's pull up both the files here. It's really easy to see. So as you can see, the dynamic form, right? So the dynamic form is where I want to inject this markup dynamically. So this is like a pretty powerful feature where what you can do is you can define whatever you need dynamically, depending on some custom metadata settings or field sets or whatnot, and define this markup for yourself, and then sort of inject it into the markup wherever you want, right? And then what you can do is you can also read the values. So I have the handle click. So handle click, basically what it does is, let's pull this controller file. So the handle click, what it does is it actually goes over each of the components. It finds it by form ID, which is the ID that I'm giving in my helper. Like each element has an ID. So I just go to the each element and I'm trying to find what was the value that the user entered and just logging it here. So let's take it in action, So as you can see, the dynamic components will not have any markup. The markup is drawn by the JavaScript. That's the difference. So earlier there was a problem because once you have a component like dynamically generated, and if you did not put the RID there, right? If you put the RID there, and then once you actually wanted to reference it using component dot find by providing the ID, it never used to actually find it. There was a bug basically. So I think this has been fixed here, and just to prove the things, I have a sample application just to demo it. It's called dynamic form test app. Basically, it just uses this component. So we can open this dynamic form test app. So let's use the command line, open it. Dynamic, okay, so it's called dynamic form test app. Yeah, I think I spelled it wrongly. Let's see, what was the component name? Oh, okay, it requires an app here. No worries. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so as you can see, it dynamically drew the markup for me. In my component, it dynamically drew the markup for me of text type, search type, and the box type based on whatever I provided here, right? In my helper file, whatever I provided. Where did the helper go? There we go. Yeah, so whatever I provided here, it automatically draw that markup for me. Now I can read the values as well. So for example, if I type something here, right, and then I say this, let's clear the console, submit it. So as you can see, I can read the values also, from that input. So whatever the input, so this says Mohit, this was text type, test was of search type, and there was a checkbox whose value was true. If I change values here, pretty much, yeah, there you go. Checkbox value is false. T was the search type, and so basically you're able to read back the everything, using the component dot find function. I just wanted to kind of illustrate that for you guys. So we have 5-10 minutes more. So let's actually go back to our slides. So yeah, the component dot find basically helps you to dynamically create DOM. Yeah, there are some references. So all the code that I have today is actually shared here in this particular GitHub repo. And for more information, obviously, you can refer the component developer guide. Before I sort of open the questions, I want to show you one more quick thing here. This thing again, it started. The format, where was it? Where was the format options here? Remote control, one sec. Yeah, I quickly forgot about where this option was basically. Yeah, somewhere there was an option for me to clear these things that are happening. Anyways, okay, so yeah, so I want to show you one more thing, which was how do I actually open up the the flexi pages, directly from the flexi pages directly from the command line, right? So currently we have to go edit it. So you can also open the flexi pages by something using the force open actually, and providing the file name here, like f is one provides it. So let's see if I can open one and show it to you. Let's see. Yeah, so let's say I want to open this flexi page, right? So if I click on this, it automatically opens up a builder now. So you will see that through the command line I'll be able to open the builder directly. So as you can see, I opened up the builder directly. That's one of the powers of basically doing this. Using the command line. Like, you don't have to type; you can just open things up directly. Yeah, so let's open the floor for questions. We have some 5-10 minutes. We can take the question before we kind of close this session here. Amit, how do you want to do the question and answer actually? Hello, Amit, you there?
Yeah, Mohit, are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So lots of people added the question in the chat window. So if you can open the chat window and read the question from there and answer them, that will be great.
Yeah, let's actually look at this. Okay, can we get recording of the session? I'm pretty sure we have that facility for that. What is a base component? Yeah, that's a good question. So base component basically is something like what Salesforce provides with a Lightning namespace, you know. So for example, whatever we were looking so far, like Lightning list view, right? It starts with a Lightning namespace here. So base components are basically, it's kind of a components for, it's a package component, like, Salesforce automatically does a lot of things for you. It applies SLDS stylings. It takes care of a lot of JavaScript. And also it takes care of providing the functionality. Like you don't write anything from the scratch. It's already been provided by Salesforce. So that's base component. Next question is, does anybody know? Okay, so the anode, right? So let's actually clear this. It just okay. Now, okay, what if I want to do some data checks before saving the lead? That's a good question, actually. So you can apply the required field, onto the record edit form, and that will make sure that the data check is handled. I think I was doing it in some of the places. Let me see if I kind of show it to you. Your own drawing.
Mohit, I have a question regarding the address based component.
Yeah, please go ahead. Can you give me a sec before I show that
Sure.
the
Okay.
older things and then come back to your question?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think this component that I built, like the one on the campaign, one on the campaign here, right? When I'm kind of creating a lead, you see, I've made a field required. So it will not allow you to kind of, submit it before you kind of submit it. Right? So some of the things get automatically applied from Salesforce input field, but you can specify that this required equals true, which means somebody has to enter that, before we go ahead. I think somebody was asking the question, right?
Yeah, Mohit, this is Mahesh.
Yeah. Hey, Mahesh.
So, hi. Uh, for address, you have shown the lightning based component for address, formatted address, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, is it like I can link it directly with the composite address field, or I can link it with any uh, like custom fields?
Yeah, you can link it with any custom field also. The way it works is it looks for an attribute of type string, So with composite field, you will still need something like an Apex or a JavaScript on the front end to populate all those things. So let me actually pull up and show you what I was doing right, for the address ones. The, it was called this one. Yeah, so really for this one, what I was doing here was I was creating a string type. You see the postal code, country options, and everything. So everything was of string type. You see this
Yeah.
attributes, right? So basically, even if you are using a complex type, I don't think it will understand, But ultimately, what you will do is you will have to go and point out that string, right? For example, even if it is a complex input field, what you can say is, address dot, let's say street. So you can say address dot
Yes.
street,
Yes.
something like that you can try. Does
Okay, okay. I thought something like for a composite field, if you give that field name alone, it will take the lightning based component will take care automatically. That's what I thought. So
yeah,
it's not like that, right? I have to link each subfields separately with this
yeah,
component. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Let me see if if I can, if we have this lightning input field that does it for you. I don't know if lightning input field actually supports the supports the address type. If it does, then that might be like the big
Okay.
thing, big
Yeah.
thing to just use that instead of, I think it does support, lightning input field. Sorry, this is force input field. So there is a force input field which actually kind of does not apply apply the CSS, and then it had a lot of bugs. So I mean, it's kind of depreciated. Nobody uses this unless it's there, but unless you want to style yourself and write a lot of JavaScript, right? Let's see the input field. Yeah, the input field. Yeah, there should be a supported. So Yeah, they don't mention which fields that they support, but definitely worth trying. But definitely the dependent fields and everything is supported, so worth trying this. I think they support it. Um,
Okay.
Basically under the hood they use this UI API. So as long as these UI APIs support it, you should be fine. Uh,
Okay.
Under the hood they use this new UI APIs basically, so should be fine for the lightning input. Okay, let's actually look at some more questions.
Okay. Thanks.
You have any other questions?
No, Mukhi. Awesome.
Thank you. What if I want to do some data? This is answered. Is it available on custom app too? Sorry, I didn't get what is available on custom app. Can we use fields like lookup fields? That's a good question, Martina. Actually, I've tried to use with lookup fields, the input field, and really it works. But there are some styling issues, and sometimes I found some weird JavaScript issues. So I mean, technically they say it on the documentation that the lookup type is supported in Lightning experience only. Not supported in mobile apps and something like that. But I would just do a thorough investigation before sort of recommending this solution or using it.
Yeah, thanks, Mohit, for answering that. Actually, I have definitely used the input field recently, and I haven't been able to use it properly. And then I had to prepare another component for that. That's the
Yeah,
reason I asked this question. Thanks a lot for answering.
yeah, no worries. Thank you. From Can we default the values from parent record and let users to update it? Yeah, I mean yeah, you can default it. I mean, not from, yeah, the parent record. No, I don't think from the parent record. So the input field doesn't give you much control actually. If you're talking about input field here, like Alan Kipale, if you're talking about input field, no, they are specific to an object. You can't do it from the parent.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mohit.
Yeah. Do we have any limitations on display number of records? So Renu Kumar, if you are here, which component are you talking about here? Is it the list view? Yeah, so if I look at list view, you can go up to 50. I think, yeah, you can go up to 50 number of records. That's the limitation. But then I think they provide you the next button to keep scrolling and going on if you have more number of records. List view, right? Yeah, the list view. Let's see the list view. Yeah, the list view, the number of rows. Yeah, so you have the rows, right? So you see, specify the number of rows. The default and maximum row is 50. Then you can click on load more, will always be there for you to keep on loading more.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm looking for the list view only.
Yeah, okay, good. Can we show different fields from parent and child object? No, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Currently I think it's very limited to the object. You can't show it for, parent and child object. This is for the input field, right?
Hey, Mohit.
Yeah.
This is not for the field, but this is for the lightning tree grid component that you have shown.
Yeah, lightning tree grid, right? So let's see the lightning tree grid. Yeah. Tell me. So here the lightning tree grid. See, the way lightning tree grid works is let's see the tree grid demo that I was giving you, right? So
Yeah.
really the way it works is it's very flexible. Whatever here I'm not using any backend or anything like that. Everything I'm creating inside the JavaScript, right? So meaning technically what you can do is you can have your Apex class and format your data structure as you want. It can be from child object, it can be from parent object. Ultimately it just cares about this format, this data type on the front end. So it's pretty flexible, only thing is to use it with different objects and different types. You will have to actually write backend Apex controller to hook with that.
No, actually, my question was like, suppose you are showing the accounts and the parent account thing on the table, right? So if I want to show the account and the contact, can we show the different fields from parent and child? Like suppose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just need to write Apex controllers for that, and you should be able to. Because see, on the front end, it just cares for the definition. It's a behavior driven. It's not tightly. I'm not inputting any anything on the markup, right? So observe it. So I'm not inputting anything on the markup here, right? There is not this one. Sorry, there is the tree grid. Tree grid app. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm not inputting anything on the markup. There's no object names or anything. It's all in the JavaScript. So since it's in the JavaScript, what you can do is you can really call your backend and create this one, based on your backend input data. Create this one, this nested data, depending on how you need it. Right? For example, if you need account and contacts, all you need to do is this will be your account and these all will be your contacts. And if you want further for the context, you can further create cases. You can go as many levels as you want from one level to back down the tree.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I need to try it, like how we can show the different columns from child object.
Yeah, you just need to have a Apex service which calls a describe function, and then whatever the columns that you return, right? You just need to have a wrapper class which says type, field, name, label, and return an array, and just input to this particular. So whenever I'm doing v.grid column set, right? You will input that particular response here, and return the data. Again, it will be a wrapper class which will have like a structure like this, fields and a children record, and a fields children record, and then you'll just put into the grid data, and then basically that's about it. It's pretty simple actually.
Okay.
Okay, so can we make the rows editable in the tree view? Rows editable in the tree view? No, you can't. Actually, you can.
Mohit, Aditya here. What I would like to see in this grid we use, like Grid Buddy, a third-party app we have, right? So there you can see account, contact, opportunity related to that, where you can directly double-click and edit and bulk save all those features, right? So in that manner, as this component also giving the same feature, so can we make these rows as editable at least few cells?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so you will need to write. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'll tell you. So this is a good question actually. So let's open the tree grid component, right? Let's see. So tree grid component, basically, the way it works is everything inside is an item. Everything is inside as an item, right? It's an item. So you are saying, can we have an input component added to that entire tree and sort of edit it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, technically you can do it. I'll tell you how you should be doing it. Basically, what you can do is, so you can definitely read the data. Read an item whenever you select something, right? They provide you a hook where you can read this entire thing, whatever is there here, right? So basically, you'll create another component here, which is kind of launch this whole nested tree in a form type of input, right? And then whatever the data here, you can populate there with the ID of the record, and then provide an input saying, okay, this is the data, this is the thing. Based on this, whenever you save with the ID, go and update in the backend. So basically, you can do it technically with you'll need one more component, like a custom component, with the input format, and then you will need some kind of a checkboxes or something here, definitely not inside the grid, because the grid, I think they lock it. You will need some kind of a, I would say, like another custom component and lightning events and Apex to sort of handle this, because I don't think they.
Yeah, in the listed grid view component, like they didn't specifically mention anything in this documentation that any other tag like input text or like that, you can't add any other tag so that you can double click and make that cell as editable. That nothing was mentioned in this documentation. So that's why we was like, can't we use any other mechanism like HTML5 or jQuery, something like that? But I don't think it will allow that.
Yeah, I mean, jQuery, you can use it. I mean, you can technically use jQuery as well, under the locker. I mean, with locker you'll find some issues, but what I was suggesting was to use another component, basically, input field. Like you can get the hierarchy function, and then whatever you select, you can read that selection, right? Because they provide you a hook to do that. So if you go to the lightning tree grid, I think you can read the selected object here somewhere. They say, okay, you can read the selected object here. Let's see. Yeah, I think they have this three selected rows, right? So you can read that. So once you kind of read that, all you need to do is just populate the data back onto that form element that you're gonna create it, right? Once you kind of do that, Technically, yeah, it is doable. Only thing is you'll not get whatever exactly that you're looking for, to have a editable cell inside this. You know,
Oh,
it's not possible to have that kind of a functionality right inside this currently, I guess.
all
You can
right.
build one. Yeah, you can build one. I mean, you can use the SLDS and build one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be
Thanks,
building.
Mohit.
Okay, can we show different is there all for Sales Cloud for instant work for different types of yeah, I don't know. I want to answer that instant question here. Can we use Lightning record edit form if you want to inline edit more than one record on the screen? No, actually Lightning edit form is basically only for one record, at a time. Can we use Salesforce DX commands for developer org? Yes, we can do. So this is a good question. Can we use Salesforce DX commands? I mean, honestly, no. Like the DX command basically is, I mean, the DX command basically what you can do is you can use some commands. Like for example, if you want to deploy something, you can't use force org open or you can. I think you can use force org open. You can't use like force source push and source pull. So only those functionalities will not be directly available with the DE orgs. But I think you don't need it. It's always good to work in a scratch org like the one that I was working. You just create a scratch org and then you can just use it, and the scratch org actually expires after like whatever the expiration date that you set. Maximum is like 30 days. So and you can delete them. So basically you'll have the code in your git repo. You can use that code and then push it. Does lightning input field support field dependencies? Lighting input field supports field dependency. That's true. Purushottam, does the Carousel component support GIF or video files too? How do we dynamically render images that we get from external system? Yeah, it's pretty much possible actually to dynamically render what do you call the input images using the Carousel component. Where is that Carousel component? So basically, Carousel component looks for the path of the file, right? Now this path you'll have to bring these files inside Salesforce files or attachments, and then you can reference the path. Or I've not tried. I think one thing you can try here is to give a path of an external source, right? Like external outside the Salesforce. You can do that. You can do that as well. GIFs and all, you can obviously store it in static resource or a video file or a link. Basically. I mean, the external path here, you might want to, they might ask you to list under CSP. The administrator will have to list some of the websites from which he's getting these images under CSP. Otherwise the browser will block it. But yeah, it should be able to pretty much do it. And it's not actually, honestly, a big deal to build a Carousel component. Not adopting this, you can build your own as well. I've built it many times. It's going to be simple. A little bit of CSS and JavaScript work. Can we pass a wrapper list from client side to the server without serializing the list in JSON? Or the list from client side to the server side controller? No, this is currently not possible. The wrapper list, I think they have a bug or something. We usually recommend to just serialize. What is the name of your IDE? The IDE that I'm using is called Visual Studio. I am not using IDE. There is an extension package that we get with Salesforce DX. So if you look at we have the Salesforce extensions. This one, it's called Salesforce extension for VS Code. Just use that, and pretty much excellent utility. What it provides you is you can do some SFDX commands, right? Like SFDX, and you can authorize a dev hub, create a scratch art, create an Apex trigger, do whatever, refresh definition, run debugger, lot of cool things here that you can do directly from the IDE. You can refer the documentation here also on how to set it up. There are some Dreamforce sessions as well here. You can refer them as well. What is the other questions that we have? Please, can you show the reference page where we can find that will work for in the project? Reference page. Not sure what is this reference page. Yeah. That's about it. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed it, enjoyed this session. And yeah, again, thank you so much for making time today for this session. There are slides can be found here. I'm gonna share all the slides. Amit is also going to put on his blog, and we're gonna post the recordings here of this session. And yeah, thanks for attending. Amit, you want to talk anything?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohit, for the great session. Everyone for joining us, and especially I just want to say thanks to all the developer group who join us, like Miami Developer Group, Chicago Developer Group, and Hyderabad Developer Group, and uh, let me see which all group join us: Ghaziabad Developer Group, Mumbai Developer Group, and Hyderabad Developer Group. Thank you, everyone, and thank you every participant from the Farmington Hills Developer Group as well, and San Francisco Developer Group as well. I was forget, like Don Robin also join us. Yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next weekend. So next Saturday again we have another session. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.